Welcome to the Sustainable Business Council lecture series. Tonight's lecture will feature Terre Mienershagen. He is an architect with Rocking M Design here in Missoula, and he's going to speak on a case study in residential green building. We would like to thank all of you for joining us here tonight. We'd especially like to thank our sponsors tonight. MCAT graciously does the filming for all of our events, and you'll be able to see this later on public access television if you're not here tonight in the audience. We'd also like to thank the Patagonia outlet and Dylan for providing some door prizes, and Burley's Natural Home Supply. The Kettle House provided us with beer for tonight, and Good Food Store provided the food. So we'd like to thank all of the sponsors that helped us out with tonight's presentation. I unfortunately forgot Terry's bio at home on my desk, so I'm going to have to wing it. I know he's an architect. I know he's an owner of the Rocking M Design here in Missoula, and he's been working on green projects for quite some time now. He recently completed a green home, and he's going to talk to us about all the things that he needed to do as he was going through the process, and the problems he ran into, and I'm going to let Terry fill you in a little bit more on some of his credentials, if you'd like, on the front end of his presentation, since I forgot the bio. I want to welcome you all tonight, and I'm glad you're all here. Terry, go ahead.
Thanks. Great, thanks for coming. As Sue said, my name is Terre Mienershagen. I'm an architect with Rocking M Design, and my wife is a landscape architect, and we've had this business in Missoula since 1992. I came tonight, as she said, to present a case study on a project we recently completed, and it's referred to as Greenhouse 1, and that's kind of maybe in the foolish hope that we could do more than one and that there might be followed. And it was suggested to me earlier, I know I needed a beer to do this, so you guys also should have beers to listen to me, and that will make the evening go really well. So I haven't done a lot of presentations. I haven't run PowerPoint a lot, so bear with me on those kinds of things, and things will go well. I kind of wanted to ask who's in the room. Are there other people involved in the building industry? What do you do?
I'm a carpenter.
A carpenter?
A roofer.
Roofer?
I'm a real estate developer.
Real estate developer. Are there other architects or engineers, landscape architects? Everybody else is here for the beer and goodies. What are your interests? What the things that bring you to Sustainable Business Council lecture series? Anybody, doesn't matter. Other than board members.
We're in real estate sales, and we work with Energy Star certified developers.
Oh, great, good. Okay, well. I get to do this, Sue, in terms of my background and stuff. I went through college in the 70s. I started out at the University of Missouri in an engineering program. Uncle Sam got me for a couple years after that, and then I started back at the University of Kansas in the School of Architecture, which is something I had wanted to do since like 7th grade. And when I got back from my tour of duty, what's referred to now as the first energy crisis hit. So we had gas prices that went up over $1, I think, a gallon, and speed limits were dropped to 55 miles an hour, and there was all this hubbub, and every hippie in the world went out and wanted to build their own passive solar home. And it was great. It was really good. There was a lot of stuff that got developed back then that then all of a sudden went like this as we reconnected the umbilical cord to our petroleum supply, unfortunately. Now, as things are kind of turning around, a lot of idealistic reasons, a lot of really good reasons, not that idealistic reasons aren't good, but for a lot of reasons, the energy issue is at the forefront. green building sustainable. This is called the Sustainable Business Council. I wish it were building. Anyway, so there's just a lot of stuff going on now that is at the forefront, and we'll look at some other projects too. When asked through my career if I design energy conscious buildings, if I incorporate passive solar and things like that, my response is typically, I never don't do that. When I went through college in the School of Architecture, that was a really important issue. It was at the forefront. We were ingrained with that. I've never lost it. And this comes through in the work that we do in our office, and we tried to show in this project that I'm going to show you tonight. And with that, we'll kind of get started. So like I said, it's a case study on Greenhouse 1. And we get some parts. I kind of started out pretty well organized in putting this PowerPoint thing together. I've never done one, and it kind of dithers out as we go along, but it's okay. So we're going to look at what, we're going to look at why, and we're going to look at how. And then we'll kind of look at the project itself also. So what is sustainability? A whole bunch of definitions up here. Webster's, using a resource that is not depleted or permanently damaged. Paul Hawkins has one. There's quite a few. These come off the SBC website, and I'd encourage you to look at that. There's some other definitions there. And I think our SBC mission statement, we envision a network of vibrant local economies and caring communities that are based on renewable resources and clean, efficient practices, and that lead to a healthy environment, rewarding employment, and a high quality of life. So what is green building? I kind of look at it as a subset of sustainability. Green building refers to design, construction, and operation of buildings that are environmentally responsible, profitable, and healthy places to live and work. A green home uses less energy, water, natural resources, creates less waste, and is healthier for the people that live inside compared to a standard home. It's as simple as that. Those are both definitions or descriptions from the United States Green Building Council. They're the ones that have, if you've heard of it, developed the LEEDS program. Again, what is green building? Is it simply an energy efficient structure? This article, it's out of Fine Home Building. There's a lot of magazines, a lot of articles in the media today about green or efficiency, sustainable design. This one says, can you heat a house you can heat with a hairdryer? Well, that's part of it, definitely. This sidebar down here in the gray, it talks about green building finding its way into law books, and what that describes is a lot of municipalities, counties, states, government entities are adopting LEED as a required method of determining the standards. That's a questionable issue. I won't get into a lot of detail right now, but to require private industry to conform to standards like that is not what LEED set out to be. But it is a good set of standards to use. Local examples. There's not just me out there. There's a lot of people doing this, and a lot of people have been doing it for a long time. Make My House Green, a project here in Missoula that you probably heard advertised. If you looked at the Sunday paper this week, this house that another firm here did for a couple or a family up in Apple Grove in the Rattlesnake, talking about a heating bill of $28. So there's a lot of energy efficient and green design going on in our community. So in the project that I'm going to describe to you tonight, Greenhouse 1, what makes it green or sustainable. And to me, it is more than a matter of including or adding a few products that are labeled as green in the building industry. There's a lot of greenwashing going on out there also. For this home, 3 major criteria: sustainability, economy, environmental and social aspects kind of a three-legged stool, support and sustainability, are integrated with 3 criteria identifiable with good design. And these were described a long time ago by an architect, I think in Greece. His name was Vitruvius, and he described the principles of good design as a combination of firmness, commodity, and delight. And this means that the overall quality of is a combination of long-term value, which incorporates economy and firmness, livability, which is a social context, as well as meeting the daily needs of the occupants, resource efficiency during construction and operation, and fitting into a neighborhood and community and being delightful not only to look at, but to live in. So why build green? Well, I'm going to bore you with some statistics here a little bit, not too long. Buildings consume, this isn't just residential, this is buildings in the United States, consume 12% of our potable water, 33% of our energy, 40% of raw materials, 48% of emissions of carbon, and then 70% of our electricity is consumed by buildings. So green buildings save a lot of energy, decrease in carbon emissions, save water, save solid waste. Cost of green buildings. The average 1% to 2%. I think in the article on Sunday on that house up the Rattlesnake, they said it added something like $20 a square foot. That's, to me, probably more than that 1% to 2%. So there are some variables in there that you got to be careful with. Payback, though. Payback is tough in homes. There's an economic payback, but what's the quality of life that you have in there too? And one of the things in business buildings, office buildings and such like that, a payback, they've had increased production, decreased sick days, decreased turnover in employees, very measurable things by doing green building. Payback over the lifetime of the building, I'm surprised that it's this low, but these are statistics from the U.S. Green Building Council. Again, what are the advantages or benefits? Environmental benefits, economic benefits, health and safety benefits, benefits to the community. So then how? Get into how do we build green? A lot of the decisions for this project that I'm talking about tonight are based on our experience and knowledge in 25 years of practice in architecture and landscape architecture. The building on the left was our first office out of our house. First office was in a spare room. It was a very small building, 600 and some square feet. Half of it was our office and the other half was a efficiency apartment. It was designed so that it could expand either way. When we moved our office into town, this became a one-bedroom cottage. It's built with SIPS panels, very energy efficient, fresh air ventilation, radiant floor heating, exterior materials that low maintenance and last a long time. The upper part of the building that you see that's gray is hardy panels, never been painted, never needs painting. The house on the right is in the lower Rattlesnake. It was an infill project, all SIPS panel construction, radiant floor heating, very energy efficient, fresh air ventilation, kind of all those key things that you look at for energy efficiency. The house on the bottom is a house I designed for my parents. If you ever want a tough client, work for your mom. This was it. SIPS panel construction, ground source heat pump, fresh air ventilation system with heat recovery, a lot of those key things, high efficiency windows and things like that. Lovely setting, passive solar, all the cool things that you want to incorporate for your mom. Again, kind of how to build green. As I said before, building green isn't just energy efficient, but there's a lot of programs out there to assist that for guidelines or prescriptive approaches. LEED that I mentioned, Energy Star, Green Bill, Green Guard. The University of Montana is developing a system they're calling Grizz Green that they can apply to buildings they build on campus. The local Home Builders Association industry here in Missoula is developing a set of standards to help with residential construction guidelines. We chose to participate in the Energy Star program to provide a basis for determining and measuring our energy efficiency in our building. The other aspects of the green building that we wanted to incorporate, we used a variety of strategies for. For energy efficiency, major components that contributed to this were thermal envelope, air leakage or minimizing air leakage, high efficiency windows, the mechanical systems, appliances, and lighting. We'll get into pictures here in a minute, folks. So, second part of this is ideas to action. How do we get from kind of what we wanted to do to actually getting the thing built? I got cold feet several times. I've been wanting to do a project like this for quite a while. We started our subdivision process, I think, in 2000, 2002, somewhere in that range. This was a lot that was part of the house we lived on, and we divided that lot off to create the space for this home. So the things that we went through were planning, programming, design, and construction. Kind of the idea behind this, here's some other projects that we've worked on in the past that incorporated some aspects of green development, maybe not as much as we would have liked. These are earlier ones, and it was scary for people. There was resistance to invest in things like this. Some from the homeowners, some from contractors, talking homeowners out of some aspects of what we were promoting at that time. But we decided to incorporate what we'd learned over the time, and we wanted to develop a project for a well-designed and constructed market-rate home utilizing green and sustainable practices. The home would be not so big, not experimental, and not what maybe in earlier times would have been an owner-built kind of dream home. I think the key here was that we wanted a marketable home. In the site planning, we went through a PNC, a planned neighborhood cluster process with the city to subdivide the property. We lived in the house on the east and divided off the property against the street. Went through a site planning process, neighborhood meetings, got a lot of input, really good information from our neighbors. It was a benefit to us to have a site available. The site was the right size. It was an infill project, but it was not a substandard lot. The location, it's in the Rattlesnakes. If you're looking at LEED, for example, in qualifying for credits, there's all kinds of things about location for bus routes, walkability, reduced driving, all this. This site worked out for us really well. We were fortunate to have it accessible to the Rattlesnake Wilderness area, to Mount Jumbo, lots of activities around there. Infrastructure was in place. Had great views, great orientation for solar access, all these good things for a site, and an infill site. Programming, it's kind of planning out what we wanted to do with the house. As I said before, we wanted a marketable house. We wanted to take advantage of the site and the location amenities, the views, passive solar, natural light. We needed to create privacy from the street. Reno's pretty busy. It's not huge, but it's pretty busy. We wanted to create a house that had a family orientation, provide a 3 to 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath, kind of the typical marketable home that was flexible. Parking was an issue. We wanted covered parking, but you'll see as we go on the house, there's no garage attached to it. Livable for life, a term, I don't know if it's new or whatever, seems kind of cool. But that it's not ADA accessible, but everything that you need to live in it is on one floor and you don't need to go up or down any steps. The main bedrooms are on the upper floor, but there's a bedroom and a full bath on the main floor, laundry availability on the main floor, everything you need. So you can go in there, have kids, Empty nester, don't need to leave. It's not so big that you feel uncomfortable in it. If somebody breaks a leg during the time, there's a room that can be a bedroom on the main floor. Sarah Suzanka, in her Not So Big House book, calls it an away room. Other than that, the house kind of has a semi-open plan on the main floor. It's a quality-quantity relationship that we were looking at also. Here's the plans. Those are horrible. Won't bore you too much with that. Like I said, all the necessities on the main floor. Carport here, main entry, living, dining, kitchen, project room, laundry over here, and this away room, which could be a den, an office, a TV room, or a bedroom, guest room here, and a full bath here. Upper floor, 3 bedrooms. Kids' rooms, bath, master suite. And a little den, office, nursery, again, a flexible kind of room in that area. The exterior of the house, in terms of the design, we had, again, good input from our neighbors. A lot of them preferred if we didn't touch it, left it alone, but they said, well, it's yours, you can do what you want. And the main comment that we got from most people is not to have a kind of multifamily rental area. I'm not making a judgment on there, that was just the biggest set of comments we had. We wanted to create a house that fit into the neighborhood and yet stood on its own, that had a presence in there. So it has a farmhouse feel. The massing, scale, and proportion are all relative to the neighborhood context, the other houses that are around it. And the details are important on the exterior as well as the interior. So how did we implement our strategies? Materials and systems we selected on the basis of local availability, appropriate technologies, long life and low maintenance, environmentally sound, healthy, and beauty. I think it looks nice. So far, we've had pretty good response to that. Examples of actually how we did this. Flooring and trim for all the interior trim was from North Slope Sustainable Woods. It's the larch that's being harvested here locally. Roughs on timber beams and trusses we got from a tree. I think I remember Mark's here. Mark is the sawyer. He has a sawmill under Scott Street Bridge and cut up this nice big pine that was down from beetle kill in Missoula, or in the Missoula area. Very local. It was a dead tree. And we use it. It's blue stain, really beautiful wood that we incorporated into this house. Use of local craftsmen. High efficiency gas boiler for radiant heat and domestic hot water systems. Low VOC paints and stain products. Continuous fresh air ventilation and heat recovery. Energy Star, that's what I mentioned we used as our measuring stick for the lighting and appliances. And we get into, oh gosh, pictures. This is good. Okay, construction. Rattlesnake, rocks. We got rocks. We got more rocks than soil. So we dug this hole and ended up with a whole lot of rocks, and one of our goals was to not haul off any more than we needed to. The picture on the right, the window wells, those are an owner sweat equity kind of thing of building the window wells out of the rocks. The house, all the walls were framed with SIPs panels, structural insulated panels, if you're familiar with those. Interior framing was typical stick framing. We did, well, I'm not going to back up because I'm afraid of this thing. But the one picture showed that the walls on each side of the stairs were framed full height to allow chases for plumbing and mechanical. All the bathrooms are stacked up. Laundry room stacked up. Kitchen is kind of off by itself a little bit, but it's got a sink and a dishwasher. So we tried to use vertical alignment to reduce the pipe runs and just increase the efficiency of it. These pictures just show kind of progress through construction. The shell went up reasonably quickly. Probably not a lot quicker than stick framing, but once they're up, it's already insulated. The sheathing's on, it's ready to go. Roof was traditionally framed, stick framing and blown with spray foam insulation, high R value spray foam. And then we got it roofed and sided and enclosed, doors and windows in the middle of the winter last year. Amazing how that works. Kind of materials and systems inside, as I mentioned, we grouped the services. The plumbing runs we tried to maintain in vertical locations and make use of these shaft walls, I'll call them, on each side of the stairwell. The flooring is either the North Slope larch, wood flooring, or tile. There's no carpet in the house. As I mentioned before, we used a hot water heating system and domestic hot water. We didn't go tankless. Again, this was an issue of marketability. I wanted continuous hot water. Got a bunch of kids, people preparing for work. You're not going to run out of hot water. 94% efficient boiler. Interior details. You can see here in the upper left, that photo is of from the dining room looking into the living room. The trusses you see up there are from that pine tree that I mentioned. The flooring is the larch. The built-ins are beech. Don't know where that wood came from, but a local craftsman built all the cabinetry, the built-ins, and the kitchen cabinetry that you see in the lower left. When I point at that, you can't see it, can you? Anyway, the kitchen cabinetry was all crafted by a small local cabinet shop. The countertops are paper stone. It's a recycled paper and resin product. Custom crafted stair. Another local craftsman built that for us. Site, rocks. We had lots of rocks. We used them for a retaining wall that you can see there in the upper photos, and that window well that I mentioned before. I built a couple of those out of the stones. And also right up the street from us, it got hauled a little ways, but a lot of the material went right there to a neighbor. We also had some signs up during construction. I can't believe how many people came by with their pickup and got rocks. The funny thing is, we never had any fewer rocks. I think at night, it's like socks and hangers in the laundry room, you know. The hangers turn into spare socks or whatever it is. We never ran out of rocks. It was amazing. Landscaping. Notes. I can't mess up. My wife's in the room. Well, we tried to locate the house on the site to take advantage of the views, and as I mentioned, provide privacy, the shape of the house. In this photograph of the house, you see there's a patio that's on the right there, and it's in the crook of the L of the house, so it's protected from the street. Also has these magnificent views of Mount Jumbo, and has a south and east exposure, so it's protected from the hot western afternoon sun in the summer. Landscaping included native plants, drip irrigation in planting beds, and a drought-tolerant fescue lawn. And a lot of the plants aren't necessarily all native, but they would be adapted to this area. You see in the photo in the upper right, our truck and trailer loaded with plants. We took a drive up to Kalispell to get these ourselves. And then just the details on the landscaping incorporating rocks. Part 3. Oh gosh. So finishing up, we saw some photos under construction and a variety of things, and here's kind of what we ended up with. I'm just going to kind of scroll through these. This is that south elevation. That bank of windows that you see, they're segmented around in a bay. That's the living room behind that. Again, taking advantage of the view up to Mount Jumbo. This is kind of a full-on south elevation. Passive solar. It isn't like knocking you in the head here, but the windows face south. We have tile floors, absorb the heat, hold it, but they're well shaded to protect from intrusion of the sun and heat gain in the summer. Carport. See here in the lower picture, the carport's seen as a multifunctional area, porch, play space for kids in the winter or when it's raining. Gosh, I want to play in the rain here. But just extends the season of kind of that indoor-outdoor space. Also for projects, set up sawhorses. You can do your work out there under cover. If you drive a reasonable sized car, 2 cars in the carport, barely. This is the back side of the house. I don't know. Doesn't look like the backside to me too much. The balcony that you see in the little photo is off the master bedroom. Just kind of another detail there. There's the views off that balcony to Mount Jumbo. That's the view out the front door, kind of looking through the carport, which acts also as a covered entry for the main entry. Interior details. This is looking from the entry space. The front door entry and the back door entry both have vestibules to close off, conserve heat. You're looking across the dining room into the kitchen here. If you see in the lower part of that photograph, it's all tile floor, and there's a wood inlaid area that kind of defines the dining room. This is the bathroom that's on the main floor that serves as a powder room or guest bath when you have people over for dinner, but also serves as a full bath if that space is used as a bedroom. This is just a set of detail shots inside. In the upper right, you're looking into that living room that we had before. This is more finished, is the difference here. Lower right, turn around, you're looking across the dining room, up the stairs. And the photograph on the left, you're on the stair landing looking down or up. And then the little detail on the bottom is the top of one of the newel posts, just the craftsmanship that went into the house. Other details, upper left is one of the balusters in the stair. The tile pattern in the upper right is in the master bathroom, tile floor, quarry tile step, and then the area that I mentioned in the dining room where it's an inlaid wood portion in the quarry tile floor is just a diamond pattern in the woodwork there. Exterior details. The reason for this shot, that window is in a closet. And it's kind of interesting, do you need a window in a closet? Well, no, got Mount Jumbo out there. It's nice when you go by. And then that's just the upper left is a kind of a close-up of that siding detail in the upper part of the gable ends. So what's important in this house? Comfort. This is our thermostat, one of our thermostats. It's set for 62. We do a setback. It never hits the setbacks. It's like it won't, we'd have to open the windows in the winter to get it down there. One of the things, if you do an energy efficient envelope, as you can reduce your heating system. I tell my mom in her home in Missouri, set your thermostat where you want it and leave it alone. When you have a good envelope, you don't need to do the setback as much. That's really important if you have a drafty old house. But in some cases, it takes more energy for that air conditioner in the summer or heater in the summer to recover from the setback than just to leave it at a steady state. Okay, certificates. Energy Star, we passed with flying colors. Was my goal to get an Energy Star certificate? That's nice. Lower right, that was my goal, and you can't read it. It's our power bills. The upper one is from the house that we lived in next door, basically the same size of house from last winter, and then the comparable one from this winter. Our gas bill was not quite half, didn't go down quite 50%. A surprise, a disappointment. Our electricity was about the same or even went up a little bit, and we've been talking about why that is. One of the reasons is when you're in the house, the lighting is really nice and we use it. We just have more lights. We have 70 to 80% compact fluorescence. but we use them more. That's a habit or a thing that we need to deal with. There's also a number of things that happen. It's got whole house ventilation. That fan, I can set it to run all the time at a low speed, all the time at a high speed, or 20 minutes out of each hour. I turned it down to running 20 minutes out of each hour, but it's still running a lot. The radiant floor heating system has a pump. Very low use, but it's running most of the time. There's a number of things that you don't realize, even though you incorporate and they're really good, they still draw a little bit of power. We have all Energy Star appliances. The lower left that you can't read also is a comparison between the Energy Star requirements and what our house actually does. And most categories we exceeded the Energy Star requirements. The upper right photo is my electrical panel, because you got to post these little stickers in there for Energy Star and to meet state energy code, and we whooped them. But anyway, the really only important one was the lower right. And it's really difficult to assess that also, because you look at dollars and cents. Even in our old house, we'd been continually dropping the amount of energy we'd been using year by year, and our power bills still were going up. Some things are out of your control. I'll say this. The biggest thing you can do is a efficient envelope. Then it doesn't matter the heating system you have or how you deliver it or what fuel you use. You're more in control of your costs. You got a one-time investment on your envelope, and it'll pay back forever. And I'd probably cut my legs off of what I was going to say later here. But so houses you do particularly are about choices. They're about your lifestyle, about convenience, and who in America isn't into that? Quality, quantity, these are all choices, decisions you need to make. Sorry if I'm in the way there. Consumables, we're known as great consumers. Economics and community. All these things factor in the choices that you make in terms of green or sustainable design or just practices, whether it's building a home or how you run your business. Our goals and our outcomes, we wanted to build a nice home. We wanted to have happy neighbors. We wanted to create a healthy environment. We wanted it to be energy efficient, low maintenance. Oh, here we go. What did I learn? Mistakes? No, I can't say that. What would I do different next time? I'd pay even more attention to the envelope. That's just what I got through saying. Thermal insulation, reducing infiltration, windows and exterior doors. That's where you want to put your investment. Heating system. I have a radiant floor heating system in here. No bones about it. $22,000, right? Something like that. That's what it cost. I love it. Warm floor. I think it's a marketing issue also. Is it necessary when you have a really good envelope? You know, the one article we looked at there earlier said homes you can heat with a hairdryer, with a candle, whatever you want to say. If you do the envelope right, you really can. The office building that we did that I showed earlier, that was our first little office, we got in there in the morning and we had a setback thermometer and we had to get rid of it. It wouldn't work. It worked in reverse. We got in, turned on our computers, our copier and everything, and drive you out of there. Just the occupant load and the machine load in the building produced more heat than you needed in the building. A house can work the same way. Heating system delivery. Radiant floor heat is very nice, very comfortable. Forced air systems is another delivery system. You got baseboard. If you do a lot of people with an efficient home do gas appliances just spotted around the house. You don't need more heat than they'll put out. It's just how is it delivered. You're going to have really warm spots near them and colder spots away from them. And then also we get down to fuel. The thing we did not address in this house was alternative fuel systems. We're on the grid and we got natural gas. Solar is good. There's costs associated with that up front, and the paybacks are getting better. That's what I can say about that. Electrical and lighting. I said that before. That's one area that I was a little disappointed in our performance, and I'd like to do better. Fewer lights, more control. Remote switching. Copper prices are going up so much, and a lot of companies have these systems that are essentially remote. They still draw a little bit of power though too. That's the downside of them. But if you did that, could you have more control and reduce your electrical costs? Fewer gadgets. We used all Energy Star appliances in here. When we moved into this house, we got rid of our microwave. We picked up garbage disposal. You know, there's trade-offs either way for gadgets. We're all attached to gadgets. And they take power. Material choices, some things with this house came up. Availability of things that you'd really like to use in the Missoula area. Things that you see advertised and really want to use, and you go to find them. They either aren't available or they cost a lot more to get here. So you really want to make wise choices about availability. More research into long-term suitability. In the house that we had lived in, we put a bamboo floor in a couple years ago. We love it. It's great. I talk to people about bamboo floor, and it's really getting a hit now because of problems people are having with it. I don't know that it was tested long-term before it hit the market as this wonderful solution to all your flooring needs. I'm not judging that. We're really happy with our bamboo floor. Availability of experienced mechanics or installers. We used low VOC paints and stuff in this house. That was a problem. The painters hadn't used it, and it has different characteristics in terms of drying and touch-up and how it works. You need to make sure that the people that you're expecting to use the materials that you select are either willing to learn, are experienced, or qualified to use those materials. You're not trying to create heartaches for people, and it's tough. Construction costs. You know, you've heard the story about architects want to spend all your money. Well, when you're also your client, it gets even worse. Better estimates, sweat equity. I put a lot of equity into this house, and I'm not sure what the value I gained out of that. I think that varies from relationship to relationship. Did I get in the contractor's way? Probably some of the time. And there's just some things I learned about that I'd carry into the next problem. A schedule. Time is money. Energy is money, time is money. You want to have a good schedule and stick with it. And controlling incremental choices and changes. You hear the horror stories of change orders. And sometimes it isn't necessarily a change order, it's just a choice you make along the way that impacts other things that lets you have less control over your costs. So a real clear thing for me in what I would do next time is trying to establish clearer, measurable goals and methods to monitor and evaluate during the design and construction processes. It isn't just energy efficiency. If you're building a nice quality home, there's all these other aspects that come into it. What is the level of quality? You know, what are the cabinets that you want in there, the flooring, the trim, the tile, and all that. And to establish those things from early on and stick with them and then monitor and evaluate those during the process is very important. We're getting close. Marketing. Sorry, John, I'm not in there. I'm not a marketer. I needed probably, if I were doing this again, either a better marketing plan from the beginning, probably even more so for me, a marketing partner. I guess I got to know my weaknesses, and that's one of them. Another idea is to pre-sell it. Not build it until you have it sold, or at least somebody on the line, let them make some of the choices. It is about choices. And this is our view. And it isn't just, that we get to look at this, it's there for Missoula. And some of the things that we can do and how we make choices in building our homes and how we conduct our businesses and ourselves, we'll let that be there for ourselves and for our kids. Thanks. Questions?
Could you give us the footprint and what the average cost is for
the upper floors, the finished space is about 2,100 square feet. There's an unfinished basement of not quite 900 square feet. And for that finished space, the construction cost was about $190 a square foot. This was not an affordable. I mean, hopefully it's affordable for somebody, but it wasn't intended to be in lower end. Yes?
What were some of the issues with bamboo floors?
Well, gosh, I wish Lauren were here. I've been working on some other projects since then, and I've recommended bamboo flooring to people, and they'll come back and they do research, which I think is great for people to look at that. And I think like Burley's quit carrying solid bamboo. They only carry the engineered products now because they've had problems with it. Ours is solid. Love it. Haven't had any problem with it. I went to a workshop Kath Williams put on as a boot camp sort of for preparing for the LEED accreditation, which I hope to take later this summer. And she's setting up the green building programs all around the world. She was in China, and she said, I noticed, I was talking to the people that I was staying with, and they have bamboo paneling and all this all over the place, but not on the floor. And she said that to them. I see you have it all over the place, but not on the floor. And they said, bamboo is round. She said, but how come you don't, bamboo is round? Well, they've been dealing with it for thousands of years, and I guess the idea is that at some point it wants to go back to its natural shape no matter what you do to it. You know, I was meeting with a flooring guy the other day, and he said it's soft. I go, not mine. I really don't know all the issues with it. I think some of it has to do with how fast it's grown, and that some of the quality control or the manufacturing process, it is a manufactured product. It's not just cut, saw, put it down. The manufacturing processes are pretty intense for it. And that some of those, I would imagine, are getting corners cut, and that it's just not coming out as well as it should.
I want to add to that bamboo floor thing, because we replaced the old carpeted floors in a 1950s ranch-style house with bamboo floors, pretty substantial areas. It hadn't been in a week, and I had a sprinkler crash out in the backyard, and it blew in through the screen of the window in the living room and flooded that brand new floor while I was gone to work. I mean, the worst thing you could possibly have done to a brand new
Wood floor of any type.
And I got home before he did, thank goodness, and dried it all up, and then just thought, well, I'll just see what happens here. And you can't even tell it happened. It lays as flat as anything. There's no water marking, nothing.
I think you hit it on the head with it's a manufacturing issue. My sense is that people are getting split bamboo floors, and that seems to be, in the research I've done, that's what it seems like.
Right. Whitney.
Well, and also I just know that like particularly in this area, it's a cupping issue. Like when you have the solid, like what you're saying, it wants to go back to being round, and when you're taking something that is naturally from a humid climate and putting it in a dry climate, I think it's going to be its natural tendency to do that. That
I've heard a lot too, that it's not suitable in Montana because it's so dry.
But it works sometimes, and also like the stuff that Lauren carries now at Burley's, there's a line that is it does harvest it sustainably and process it with no formaldehyde resins and that type of thing. There is good bamboo out there, definitely, but I know that like that particular brand that does FSC certified woods, like they will only sell their strand woven engineered because it has that stability to not have the cupping issue happen.
Right. That brings up one other thing. When I talked about heating systems, I got a radiant floor heating system under a wood floor. I have to accept the fact that floor is moving a lot, and that's bamboo, wood. Whitney works with North Slope and knows what I'm talking about. But whether it was oak or anything else, it's going to move when you have that heat right under that wood floor.
Did you put the radiant? How did you install the?
what you might call a staple-up system between the joists. It's actually on aluminum fins that it snaps into, but it's directly under the floor, not in a concrete thickened slab.
For foundation?
The foundation is ICF wannabe. I had an ICF system designed into it. Contractor, that was one of the things we negotiated out. I've actually, in terms of the insulation value, it's a little better. It's got 2 inches of blue board on each side instead of the 1.5 inches or 2 inches of styrofoam. So it's
a form-up system?
Yeah, it's an 8-inch concrete wall with 2 inches of blue board on each side. I had a question over here. Just a second, I'll get back to you. He had his hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you talked about the importance of the envelope and what elements are included in that envelope? The Tyvek and the sheathing and the studs and the insulation?
That's a really good question. I am an advocate of the SIPS panels. I've been using them. Most of the projects that you saw there have SIPS panels for the walls, and some for the roofs also. It's a really good product because it reduces the thermal bridging that studs have. Another really good system is spray foam insulation in terms of the thermal aspects of it. Also, my roof, that's what I did with it. It's stick framed and then the spray foam insulation. It glues it all together. It really locks it up tight. It resolves the issue of moisture because it's impermeable, sufficient for our purposes, where you don't have to have a vapor barrier on the inside. The thermal envelope, and I spoke simply to thermal, but I shouldn't do that because it's a very important issue, the moisture migration through the walls. In our climate, our biggest concern is moisture moving from the inside out. We typically have higher moisture inside. You also need a wind and moisture barrier on the outside, but not like visqueen. It doesn't want to be impermeable. It wants to be breathable. So Tyvek, the Gore-Tex kind of house wrap, is a really good product or method. I don't want to promote a particular product, but that type of product as a method is very good in our climate. Keeping the other thing, not just thermal, it has to do with it, but indirectly is the infiltration, is sealing against air leakage. The part of the Energy Star requirement is a blower door test. They'll qualify you with 6 air changes per hour. What you really shoot for in a tight house is 1 or less. And one of the issues in ours is where we have most of our air leakage is in our the outlets and switches on the exterior walls. In the design, you have to have outlets in walls, all around by code. I minimize those, and I try to have little stub walls where I can put switches to keep them all out of the outside walls. The SIPS panels, you don't want any plumbing in them. I just won't do it. If I have to have plumbing on an exterior wall, I'd fur it out and run the chase up in there. Is that addressing your question? The roof is incredibly important. One thing on my house, again, one of those things I would do different is either a cold roof or in addition to the spray foam in the joist space is put a rigid on the inside, because I still have a thermal bridge. Even though the R value of that roof system and the overall envelope of the house performs great, it's embarrassing. I get those lines on a light frost or light snow. It's less heat loss than a traditional cold attic, but a traditional cold attic, the reason you don't see those lines is because the whole attic is cold and you're losing all your heat from your ceiling through your attic. So there's a couple of things, different things that you can do to address that I would do differently next time.
As far as sustainability goes, with the large flooring and trim, is it considered sustainable if the market did accept this as the norm, the lead standard, or buying locally, this sort of thing? How sustainable is it really when you start looking at it as a mass sort of transition? Does that make sense?
Are you talking about
the whole community deciding that they're going to go this route?
I think you have 2 questions there. One, I heard you're asking something about the large, but the other thing you're asking about is, as you accept something as the norm, does the ladder, I can't think of the term, does it rise? Are the standards up? And LEED, that is an amazing thing about that. That's absolutely what they're doing. And Energy Star also. The goal there is that it's a percentage greater than code requirements. Well, every time we get a new code, the requirements are greater. So Energy Star bumps theirs up and LEED bumps theirs up.
Well,
LEED,
I'm sorry,
Go
I'm
ahead.
not sure if I worded it correctly. Let's say, because if you're, part of the LEED is buying locally and sustainable products.
Okay.
But once everybody in the community buys into this idea, and then they start buying the same products, now you have the entire consuming market looking at these local, is our local economy, or the local products.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
we have two people that can help answer that.
We have enough wood and
Yes.
mills in Missoula to easily supply this whole darn town with locally grown stuff.
Let's wait till we get that problem.
Okay, totally, that's a good problem to have.
Problem to
yeah.
have.
It'd be a
So,
great
It'll
problem.
be a while.
as far as that goes, I mean, our community is,
There's no shortage.
Yeah.
I mean, and the bottom line is the more people, I'd be really impressed. I mean, currently what LEED gives local credit for locally sustainably harvested materials is on a scale of anywhere from 10% of the project up to, like, if you get to 40%, that's an exemplary performance. Well, 10% of your whole cost value of all of your materials and resources, getting that all locally is it takes a lot. I mean, because it's based on a cost value, so it kind of also depends on what you're buying.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a great thing to strive for.
One of the things, like with this too, is FSC and all these different things in LEED, is you can do things, but like that timber that I got from Mark, it's not FSC certified. I know where it came from. I'm convinced that that is a sustainably harvested product, but if I went after LEEDs, I couldn't get any credit for it.
Unless you could get exemplary performance with innovation and design.
Right, but for the points for that product, because it hasn't gone through a certification project or process, you sometimes can't do that. Does that answer your question? Yes, ma'am.
Question, that this, you're talking about new construction, if you have a home and you want to try to make it more sustainably friendly, would you speak to like replacing windows and doors?
The biggest thing I would do is address the envelope, and that would include the windows and exterior doors. Yes. There's a really good article in the recent Fine Home Building, a lady architect, I think, yeah, she's an architect, and they have 3 projects that they did over a long period of time. And they say, here's what we did the first time, here's what we learned, here's what we did on the second one, here's what we learned, here's what we did on the third one. And these are old, really old homes. And it's a substantial investment. Now, if you compare that to dozing that down and starting over, and the quality that's inherent in that house with the woods and the craftsmanship and the trim and the detail that are almost impossible, and believe me, I know, I mean, my costs on this house for some of the things that I wanted to do that seem fairly simple, cost for labor is incredible. So whatever you can preserve and reuse in an older home, I think if you're happy with your location and you got some basics there, if it isn't like, we don't have termites, but if it isn't like thrashed, boy, what a good deal. Investing in an existing building is a tremendous opportunity, and even we're talking about LEEDs here, and there's incredible credits on that. Not that you want necessarily to go LEED, but what they're telling you is that there's great value in doing that. Jen?
Did you just say on the side of your corner of your mouth, we don't have termites, meaning we don't have them in Montana? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Well, we do. 'Cause
Well-
I live in Montana, in Missoula, and we have termites.
Okay.
Carpenter ants? Or
No,
termites?
we had termites in our house, and we felt as if they came in with
Out of state wood.
invisible wood.
Well,
It was-
oh, really? Well, that could be. Yeah, and the mild winters we've had here, if they're imported, they can get a foothold, and that's a whole nother issue that we won't address tonight with
But we
climate
went to
change.
NCAP pesticides website, and we got rid of them organically.
Great.
So you can do that.
All right, thank you. All right.
Nobody worries.
God bless you. John?
We're kind of along the same lines of trying to make your existing homes more sustainable, just historically, and this is, I've just heard this, but I don't know if this is true, but do you have any information on the envelope of the homes, essentially by decade? And my question is kind of based on what I heard, that homes built from the 20s till the 60s, or maybe even mid-70s, were pretty drafty, and that that was an okay thing. It was actually built in so that you didn't die in your home. And then the 80s came along, and uninteresting building started, but very, very efficient building in terms of blocking out all the cold and keeping in your cool or your heat.
And they self-destruct and cause health problems.
Is that true, first of all? And are we at a state of the art right now in terms of understanding ventilation?
We understand better, and I don't have empirical data or knowledge about that, but I probably have a little more exposure to that kind of information than you would, but I would agree with that. I don't think in the stuff that was built pre-World War II, let's call it, or pre-baby boom, shortly after World War II, was built intentionally for health reasons, you know, that they knew what they were doing. I think it was by default. And I have a home in town that was built in 1928. Originally, I'm sure, with a coal furnace. In the 60s, they put asbestos siding on it, insulated it some, and put in electric wall heaters in it. Whew! You know, well, it's just horrible. It's an old house. It's drafty. They put storm windows on it, aluminum storm windows too, so that helped a lot. But we put a furnace in it, one of the first things. Energy costs relative to the other costs of a building over its life weren't as great a concern until recently. In the 80s, in response to the first energy crisis of the 70s, super good sense homes, things like that, they just started insulating and sealing the heck out of these things, not realizing that because the house wasn't drafty anymore, that it was going to have poor indoor air quality, have mold problems, all kinds of problems that created as a result of that. There's other things that factor in too. The house that we're in now, noise is an issue, drywall. The other houses, the older houses we lived in, plaster. They're much quieter, right? And those products also aren't as susceptible to some of the damage due to moisture and other things that what you got to realize is after World War II, we were in a building boom. It was an economic thing, you know, everybody has their own home, the American dream kind of thing. It was a response to a need, production framing. Manufacturers responded to that by building materials that could go up quick and easy and very cheaply. I think if you look at Europe before that and even since then, their housing costs were much greater than ours. Their costs were incredible. Families saved for generations to build a house. The house lasts 100 years. We got into production, consumption kind of thing, and yes, we built a lot of, not just homes, a lot of buildings that are not healthy, not energy efficient. You look at college campuses, office buildings, all kinds of buildings that were built during that era, and they all have the same faults. Jenny's working on a project right now. They're putting the steam tunnels, extending the steam tunnels back out on UM, because through that period of time, they let the buildings run on, they put gas or electricity and had unit heaters and air conditioners on each building. Now they're realizing the mistake they made, and they're going back to the centralized system on the campus and running the steam out to these buildings. When energy was cheap relative to other costs, we didn't think very good. And now it's catching up with a vengeance.
I wonder if you could speak briefly to the tension I feel like there is between one centralized set of sustainable or green building standards versus the sort of fragmented system we seem to be having that yet may be more regionally specific?
Yeah, a little bit. Although I want to be careful, my knowledge is limited here. But LEED is a great thing, the LEED program. I don't think it's appropriate in a lot of situations. It's a very centralized thing. In fact, Kath Williams that spoke at this workshop, I've spoken with her on several occasions, and she feels it's gotten a little out of hand. There's a really lot of good aspects to it, but it's appropriate for certain types of buildings and certain types of builders or clients, let's say. I think what you're talking about in terms of regional or local development of appropriate building technology is great, is probably better, but each of those are subject to their own set of political things that impact them. And I'm concerned, I mentioned the Grizz Green thing, I'm concerned that's a kind of a shortcut, and they'll sidestep some of the real issues because there won't be accountability. There won't be, that's the big issue, I think, in any of these, what I mentioned in mine, and I'm not very clear about some of these things, but measurability. Making a set of goals that you have that's measurable and doable. You know, don't set them so high that you can't achieve them, but achievable and measurable goals. And then a good system of accountability. A lot of times that's the beauty of LEED, and why when people, and our state is undergoing a thing now, well, they'll say they'll want a building that the state is building to be certifiable for LEED, but they don't want to go through the LEED thing, and they're saying, well, we don't want to pay for it. But really what the issue is, if you don't do the certification, you haven't really gone through the tests and evaluations that determine if it really meets the goals that you set up for it. So whether it's local or national, centralized or regional, I think it always needs, if it is centralized, you know, large scale, let's say, you know, nationalized, it needs to be adapted for local conditions, but it can't be so specific locally that it's undermined by local politics, let's say. When I say politics, I don't mean that in the normal sense. It just the good old boy system, whatever you want to call it, that affects what's going on. Accountability is the issue.
I was just going to add too, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the State Building Industry Association is working on adopting the National Association of Home Builders Green Building Program standards, either as is or in some modified form that is more appropriate to the issues that we face in Montana. And as that comes along, that's also like LEED, a third-party verification system. So there is accountability involved in that. It's a different set of standards than, say, the LEED standards, but it's more applicable towards home builders and people building.
Although the National Association of Home Builders may have sort of skewed. I just worry about that because I think there's a tension between how much teeth the regulations have versus how appropriate they are, like the political versus, you know, because, you know, National Association of Home Builders is an umbrella organization for a lot of big builders, you know, who make a lot of money building. And so I wonder how you decide whether it works or whether it's doing what it's supposed to be doing versus, you know, making it.
So one of the political issues on even LEED, U.S. Green Building Council, is it's just like building codes are the same way. Who's writing them? Who's lobbying for them? What's their goal? You know, is it a you know, the worst case is, I'll just get to it, is a manufacturer that wants their product certified, right? And they're going to lobby, they're going to do whatever they can to get it. Whether it actually, you know, if you have your set of goals, you know, environmentally sound, energy efficient, socially responsible, you know, what we look at as sustainable and green, if it's measured against those, and there's, even for them in establishing the third-party verification, they need a third party to make sure they're not kind of cutting it short on some areas. So the political involvement in it is at every level. And, you know, for homes, I think the beauty of that is, and the reason I'm so interested in either residential or small commercial projects is that it's an intimate process. where the owner is the occupant, is the user. I think when you get into the problem is when it's disassociated from the occupant user from the owner.
Well, with the person who pays for the building costs is the person who pays for the maintenance costs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the federal government is great at that because they realize they're in there for the long term. So they're looking at long-term costs, operating costs, at least as important. They know the cost for initial construction of the building is minor relative to the overall cost of that building and its operation over its life. They know that good design costs are almost insignificant, and yet, I'll just raise my hand. And I talk to people, as an architect, residential, and they go, the fees are, we can't afford an architect. And I don't disagree with them. I also say you can't afford not to, but no, it's true because you get a government building, its cost over life is incredible for operating, and the biggest cost in an office building is employees, not the building. Anyway, any other questions?
I've got one.
Yes, Scott.
You mentioned marketability being really important, and if you were to rebuild the house that you were talking about here, what would it be? 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, and someone who has that kind of money, are they looking for this type of thing right now, or do they have so much money that it's real low on their part?
That's a really good question. I wish I knew the answer so that I could have met those better. I got to honestly say some of the issue we've run into is timing, right? I mean, when the house was supposed to be done and when it was done, there was this change in things. It's also true that is somebody that's looking at an upper end house, and we're not talking $1 million house here by any means, but it's still pretty high end for Missoula. Are they concerned with those same things, of the power bill every month or this or that? Well, my gut feeling, which is not good, at times, but is that I wanted to build the house so that it appealed to them on other levels also. And that's why the details are the way they are. The craftsmanship and the woodwork and the materials that we used are appealing on many levels. And it isn't just green and efficient. I have huge respect for what's going on in Missoula and Habitat for Humanity right now. They're building wonderful houses. They're using SIPs, they're using heat recovery ventilation systems, they're building good tight houses, and they're building them very economically. I mean, they're truly affordable homes, and they're meeting a program. And most of the houses they're building are better performing than most of the houses that are getting built speculatively. And yet there's a qualitative, quantitative difference there too, and there's just different markets in Missoula, different people, and I guess a house like Make My House Green, a house like the one that I built, it's a smaller segment. It's not going to hit the mainstream market. Everybody that wants a 3-4 bedroom, 2.5 bath house, that house isn't going to appeal to them. It isn't hitting as broad a market as some other houses. Yet I guess I believe in what I'm doing enough to have taken that risk. The other side of the coin is the house that was in the paper on Sunday, where the client knew what they wanted, went to the architect, and they built a really efficient house, and it's also a quality, nice quality, good-looking home. I've been fortunate enough to have a few clients like that also. I don't know. The marketability it's my downfall. I guess in some ways I'm going a little bit on faith on that, and we'll see. I don't know.
We used to build energy efficient houses in the 70s and 80s as energy options, and people made it very clear to us that the kitchen was and the bathroom and a lot of other things were way more important than any energy efficiency or anything we could. So we did like you. We tried to figure out how to do things nicely, and knew that the kitchen and bathrooms were important to these people, and they wanted more windows than what we wanted, and everything that we wanted, they anyhow.
Yeah. Well, and the more thing, the quantity versus quality is something you come across in every project, residential or anything else, but particularly in residential when you're dealing with a homeowner, say a custom design, when you're dealing with a client. That project grows from when they started to when they finish, and then you got to kind of bring it back in to get it in their budget. It's a tough deal. But if in our house that we built, the rooms are compact but comfortable is the way I'd say. There's no great room. There's no really big spaces, but they're all very comfortable, very functional, and there's no wasted space. And I think there's going to be people that are in the price range of that house that want that big bathroom, that want those big spaces, and they would rather have that than these other things. And I'm not making a judgment on it. For myself, I am. I know what I want and what I prefer to do, but there's houses out there, and Sue's given me the warning. So thank you very much.
Terry, that was wonderful. It was a great presentation. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I want to invite you to our next sustainability lecture, which will be May 15th. It will be in the Stensrud building. The social hour, as always, starts at 5:30, and we always have great food from some local vendors. And the presentation will start at 6. It will 6:15 actually for this one. It will be socially responsible investing with Susan Estep from the Great Northern Group of Merrill Lynch here in Missoula. The reason it's at 6:15 instead of 6 is because at 6 o'clock we'll be awarding our 4th annual sustainability awards. We give one to a sustainable business, one to a sustainable new venture, a sustainable nonprofit, a sustainable advocate in Missoula, and then our SBC Volunteer of the Year. And we would hope that you can join us at the Stensrud building. Thank you all.